Yo, what's up? So I'm gonna be updating my PVE tier list and hopefully PvP in this video as well. We'll see if we have enough time. But yeah, this is how the old tier list looks like. I'm gonna do a few changes, a few swaps. First unit is I'm actually gonna add another row below right here. Don't do it. It makes your account worse for now. Okay. So this is the only unit that you don't want to give the Divinate to, and that's Chuan. And the reason is because Liam exists. If you still don't know what Chuan's Divinate is, it's at the start of a round, the bearer has a 100% chance to gain an attack up for 1 turn. Now this is bugged right now. You may or may not have noticed that even when you have your Chuan at a lower attack, your Liam still gives the attack buff to him. And also, if you don't have a Liam and you're still contemplating on whether to give Chuan the attack, the Divinate or not, still do not give him, because Liam is a very good unit, and eventually you will get Liam, and that will boost your account even more, rather than giving the Chuan Divinate right now. So what I'm going to show you right now is the bug that Chuan and Narmer shares. I'm going to use an attack buffer for the entire team, and I'm also gonna run Liam, and I have my Narmer at whatever attack that is, lower than my Brewster. So my Brewster has a ton of attack. He has plus 5,000 attack, higher than Narmer. Bear with me a little bit, right? This is very important. So if I don't have an attack lead, I use an attack up, AoE attack up to my team. When Liam casts his S1, S3, it will go to Brewster, because Brewster has the highest attack in the team. But for whatever reason, the Divinate boost Narmer's attack higher if I were to run Liling as the attack lead. Now check this out. Now I have attack lead, and when I do an AoE attack buff, check this out, right? The buff actually goes to Narmer instead of Brewster, and this is the reason why your Chuan keeps hogging the buff from Liam, even though you have your Chuan at a lower attack than your for example Embla or Tever. Now I'm going to show you one more thing. Check this out. There's also a bug with Narmer, and I think it should be Chuan as well, but I'm just going to show you. If I were to run an attack buffer, like for example for Breeze, that single target attack buff, what happens is I'm still running the attack buff, attack lead, but because my Narmer is not getting a double stack of attack buff, my Brewster ends up getting the buff from Liam. See, I'm running attack lead. It was not the same scenario as previously, because previously I was using Dahlia. Dahlia gave an AoE attack up, whereas for Breeze only targeted my Brewster and gave the attack up to Brewster and not to Narmer, even though Narmer has attack up. So the Divinate on Narmer and Chuan is the reason why you are not getting the Liam's buff on the correct DPS as per. So what you want to do, if you are unfortunate enough to already give the Divinate to Chuan, in your Falsetto Fantasy, you do not want to run Chuan as your attack lead. You don't want to run any attack lead for that matter. Just run any other lead, speed lead, whatever you have in that team. Don't even bother running a leader skill if you only have Chuan as the leader skill effect. So if you were to do this, right, my Narmer, or in your case your Chuan, will not be the highest attack in the team, and he should not hog the Liam's buff. That's the temporary fix that we have right now until DISLYTE decides to fix it. So that's what you want to do. If you already have Chuan's Divinate, don't run attack lead. That's all for the rambling. That was a little bit too long, but that's very important. You do need to know this. And then the new unit, Hailey, it only gives her damage reduction. She doesn't need it, and she's not really a DPS. She's mostly a support. So the added stats to her, like I said in my previous tier list video, most of this DPS are here because of the added stats. More stats means you're doing more damage, which means you're getting more score and you're getting more rewards, right? But Hailey is not really that good of a DPS. She's mainly in the supporting role, so she's just gonna go to no. Jin Qiu with all the buffs, unfortunately I think he's still a no. he is not a good enough DPS in PVE. Keep in mind, this is PVE only, so the added stats that he gets is not really going to bump up your score that well. And also there's not that many PVE contents that you use him in. So he's going to go to no. Mavis, I might put her in decent, because I think there's a few teams, if you have her Divinate 1, Divinate 3, her Divinate 3 gives you an attack up whenever she gets her turn, if you don't have a disease debuff on you. So random attack up to one of your teammates, but again, she kind of lacks in PvE usage currently. If you don't have much options, then she can be run for cheat death mechanics, but most of the time you don't even want your units to go into the Graveless state because you're wasting turns that way. So yeah, I would still put her at no. And then the Fatum Sisters, previously I ranked her as no, I ranked them as no, but I'm gonna bump them up to decent right now. Their Divinate is, when they cast their S1, they have a chance to land a speed break, and this is very important for Sonica, because when you ramp up Sonica's team 1 to a really high score, you want multiple avenues to put a speed down on Sonica, and this will help you have the higher uptime on speed down on Sonica. And when you have higher uptime on speed down on Sonica, you will then do more damage and get more score that way. So yeah, they're gonna go to decent. It's not just for Sonica, you can also use them in Phobiter as well, which could help you, apply more speed on the boss, speed down on the boss. Archibald is going to go to no. They increase cooldown by 1 turn. He's not really that good in PvE. He's good in towers, but you don't really need his Divinate. Farrah, I don't even know what Farrah's Divinate is, but I'm gonna put it at no. When casting Cold Water Splash, dispels 1 buff from each enemy, and after casting Cold Water Splash, the barrier has a 100% chance of gaining synergy. So her S2 now dispels and also gains synergy. Not useful for PvE, don't need to go for it. Narmer, okay, I went ahead and put him in no in my old tier list right here. Yeah, it's somewhere no right here. But the buffs made him super viable to make me bump him up to either good or decent. I'm gonna actually put him in good. And again, this I forgot to mention again, this tier list is mostly for R0 to R2 for the non-legendary streamers, and for legendary streamers it's going to be R0. Narmer at R2, I would say is worth it to go for his Divinate if you have his skills maxed out. You can see the showcases. My Narmer is R3 right now, and he's doing a lot of work. He's speedrunning everything. He's the speedrun king for APAP. I also use him in Falsetto Fantasy. Hopefully I can show you. I think right now we do have all 3 Falsetto Fantasy team up. Dark Starlord team. My Dark Starlord team uses Narmer. I'm also testing him out in Team 1 as well. He's not that bad in Team 1. But for Narmer Team 2, he actually puts in quite a fair bit of work. So I got a 31 million score with him, Team 2. And he scores about, I think, 1.5 million alone by himself. And this is not even R6. Again, he's good for APAP as well. The added stats will help you in bossing contents, and also the Divinate effect will help you to clear the first 2 waves of APAP easier. This is the team I'm running with Narmer. It averages out around 4 to 5 turns right here. Very good. Yeah, that's Narmer. He went from no to good. And next, I ranked Lucas in no previously. Yep, I'm actually gonna bump him up to must have. He's a free to play Divinate. Well, not quite free to play, because most players don't have enough club shop currency to go around to buy his Divinate, but I'd say his Divinate is very worth it. If you can buy the full Shimmer Racket, I think the next must buy is Lucas Divinate. So his Divinate is that he gives him speed when he casts his S3. This will help you a lot in tower contents if you are struggling. It's gonna help you a lot in the Inferno Tower. And the added stats, you don't even need to level it up, but these stats right here will help you clear the towers easier. The Inferno Tower, he's a must-have, mainly because he's a free-to-play option, and you don't need to summon Divinate Disc for him. And then Biondina, I put her in no previously. I think I might bump her up to decent. Nah, actually nah. She's still only used for Team 1 of Dark Starlord, and her damage isn't really all that much, even with the Divinate. So I'm still gonna stick with no with Biondina. This one, Norah or Farrah, I don't know which one she is. Okay, she's Norah. Her Divinate is after casting Halcyon Harmonic, which is her S2, she gains 100% chance of attack up for 1 turn. I think she's a no. She's only used for Andras, and this part right here doesn't really help you all that much if you're already running an attack buffer in your team. So I'm gonna put her at no. Okay, so Ophelia, I put her at no. Previously, I think. Let's check. No, Ophelia, I put her at decent. Okay. Yeah, she's gonna stay at decent. I think she's good at R2, especially with the buffs that she received, making her R2 -1 cooldown on her S3, so she can go on a cycle of S3 and S2, S3, S2, S3, S2 infinitely, right? So with her Divinate gives her more damage on her Elegant Strike, which is her S1. So if her rotation is S3, S2, S3, S2, she's gonna be spamming a lot of this S1, because her S3 will pursue with the Elegant Strike 3 times, which means she's gonna be spamming her S3 3 times every 2 turns, which is insanely good. And it's also final damage. It adds a lot of damage. She's useful for Falsetto Fantasy if you don't have much options, and this is only mostly for R2. She's also useful for the Shadow Stream boss and also Shadow Glow. Yeah, she's gonna stay at decent for now. Valeria, right here, yeah, increases her S1 damage with a condition if the target speed is lower than her. So due to that reason right there, I would put her at no. If there's no condition where she just increases her S1 damage by 30%, I would put her here. And the reason is because when you go up against Falsetto Fantasy bosses and you get a really high score, the boss will outspeed your DPSs. You can't really do anything about that. So when the boss outspeeds your DPS, you pretty much have no effect on your Divinate, and that's why she's a no. Maybe decent, but she doesn't see much use in Falsetto Fantasy unless you have her at R6, and I'm not gonna include her R6 in this video because it's mostly just whales will have her at R6, right? So yeah, she's gonna go to no. Donar, previously I ranked him at no. I'm gonna bump him up at must have, because once again he's a free to play option, and it's using the point war currency that we have an abundance of currently. They are starting to give out a lot of this currency back again. So Narmer, Donar is back to must have. His Divinate is very good for clearing the flow towers and also for temporal tower and even infinity tower. And I also tested him out in speedrunning Chronos. He does almost enough to one-shot the waves with his passive alone, and yeah, it's pretty good. And if you don't have much options in your Falsetto Fantasy, like if you don't have Embla, if you don't have Tever or stuff like that, Mateo and stuff like that, you can use him in Falsetto Fantasy. I did use him in my Counter Sonica team, and he's pretty good. Oh, sorry, not Counter Sonica, my Forbiter team last time. Yeah, right here. He's in my Forbiter team, and he does very good damage as well. Raven, I think I put her in no. Previously, let's check. Yep, I put her in no. I'm still gonna put her in no because she is only used for mostly for speedrunning Ritual Miracle. If you don't need her Divinate to one-shot the waves, you don't really need to give it to her. And she doesn't see much use outside of speedrunning APEP and Andras. You know, Chronos, she's not used. Fafnir, she's not used. And in APAP, if you can already one-shot the first 2 waves without her Divinate, you don't need to craft it. We have Camille next. Camille is also a free-to-play option. I put her in no last time. I'm gonna put her in must-have. Free-to-play option, don't get lazy, get it. Even though it's not good, she might see some use in the future. It's not that good of an effect, but it helps you to clear the wind tower easier, which is the hardest tower right now. Yeah, even if she has a very low purpose, I would still just get her Divinate because it's free. You can get it from the cube shop, which we get an abundance of, and it's using the blue stones as well. It's not the pink stones. And Ana is going to go to no. She doesn't see much use in PVE. She's mostly just for PvP, and her Divinate doesn't really help you that much. It just restores her HP. The added stats can help you, but again, when you run her in PvE, for example, she's not really your DPS. She's there for just slightly higher DPS than your support, and because the fact that she provides the immunity buff. That's pretty much it. That's the only reason why you would want to run Ana in your PvE teams. Okay, Liam. Since we are talking about R2, I might even put him in must-have. At R2, he becomes a very good DPS, which is at the start of the combat, Liam's attack ignores 30% of the target's defense, and this part of the passive doesn't really matter as much unless you have a Valeria in your team, right? But at R2 is where you can run him as a DPS for your team 1 Sonica, and that's the reason why I put him in must-have. If you have him at R0, he's a good investment to go for, because he actually does a good amount of damage even at R0, because his Divinate adds his final damage to his S1, and he's going to be spamming his S1 like crazy, right? He only has 1 skill pretty much. Liam is used for all of the Falsetto Fantasy bosses. You can use him for all normal Shadow bosses, albeit you don't really need his Divinate in those scenarios. But in the Falsetto Fantasy, getting his Divinate can bump up your score slightly. R2 is a must-have. Fuxi, last unit, gains 3 stacks of Far Journey at the start of a round, gains 3 stacks of Far Journey after casting 1 Harmony. The effects doesn't matter. I'm gonna put him in good. Okay, even though the effects doesn't matter, the reason why most of these units are in the good tier is because they give them raw stats. And if you've already seen the showcase of Fuxi, he's not just a support, he's also a DPS. In the Embla team, he's doing the 2nd highest DPS in the team. So if you were to give him more attack and more HP, because he scales off both of them, you will end up getting a higher score on your Falsetto teams, because he is going to be doing more damage as compared to other supports, like maybe, let's say for example, Xuan Pin. The reason why Xuan Pin is over here is because you can add a lot of stats to her, but she's not gonna increase your score by that much. You're not gonna be building her with crit damage. You are gonna be building your Fuxi with crit damage, so his multipliers are gonna be insane. He also pursues every time your allies perform S1. He's another DPS to your team. So the added stats that you get from the Divinate, which is attack and HP, he scales off of both of them, and you will get a higher score by doing more damage with him. Okay, I'm actually gonna bump down Ahmed to decent, because he only does healing, and we have a power crap version of Ahmed right here for PvE, which is this guy, Fuxi. So I think that lowers down Ahmed's usability. Just healing is not enough anymore. His supporting song is very good, that's why he's still being used in some of the teams, but for healing, this guy just outshines him in every possible way. Okay, let me just briefly go through the Espers. These 2 Espers right here, the reason why they're up there is because they have a good effect on their Divinate, and they get booster stats from the Divinate ranking up as well. These units right here, Lucas, Donar, and Camille are only here because they are free. You should get them regardless whether they're good or not, because they're free. And the currency is pretty easy to get outside of Lucas. And then Liam, if you have him at R2, then he becomes a very good DPS for Sonica and other bosses as well. And this part right here, the units that are in here are only because they are a DPS that don't have a good effect on their Divinate, but because they are getting raw stats, those raw stats are going to get you a higher score in Falsetto Fantasy, in Shadow bosses, in any contents that has a score mechanic. The decent one, they are mostly used for Ritual Miracle farming. If you already have enough damage, then you don't need to craft the relics for them or the divinate for them. Or they're here because their effects are very lackluster, but just enough for them to be just decent for some of these bosses in Falsetto Fantasy. I'm actually gonna bump down Lewis. Lewis doesn't see much use anymore in PVE. Ritual Miracle, Desolate Lands, or even Falsetto Fantasy doesn't see any use pretty much. He's only used in PvP, that's it. Yeah, that's about it. And let me know what you think about the tier list.